IRS Notice CP128. You might receive this notice from the Internal Revenue Service if you had a tax overpayment when filing your Form 941, which is the quarterly employment tax return. So we're going to go through this notice, what you should be looking out for, and then what your options are. Realistically, this is more of an informational notice because it's applying an overpayment to your tax account. So the most important aspect is just getting a better understanding of how your tax account changed because of this. So before we get into the meat of the form, I always take an opportunity to go over a couple of items at the top. So in the upper right hand corner, you can see the notice number. You should see CP128. You can see the tax period covered, which in this case is the tax period ending December 31st, 2016. You'll see the notice date, which is January 8th, 2018. And then you should also see your employer ID number, as well as a contact phone number from the IRS. On the left-hand side, you should see your company's name and address. Take a quick look at it just to make sure that it's correct. If you've relocated or if you've changed your responsible party since your last filing and this is different, you'll want to make sure that this reflects the most current information. So you can file a change of address form. For individual taxpayers, that would be IRS Form 8822. For business owners, that would be IRS Form 8822-B. And if you happen to be a sole proprietor that owns a business, you may consider filing both if both changes of address apply to you. For example, someone that owns a company that moved their personal residence and their company address to a different home location would probably need to file IRS Form 8822 for the individual tax return side, and then IRS Form 8822-B for their business side. So let's take a closer look at this. So in this case, it looks like you had this taxpayer had an outstanding balance. They applied an overpayment of $650.25 to the balance, and the balance due is now $29,200. And then here's a breakdown of that balance due, the balance on the account, the failure to file or failure to pay penalty, and then interest charges. I'm kind of surprised that on this example they don't actually see the $650 overpayment applied, but this is the notice that says we applied an overpayment to your notice, to your tax situation. And then it does talk about what you would need to do immediately. In this case, because the overpayment wasn't enough to offset the entire tax penalty or balance, there still is an outstanding tax balance, which the IRS expects you to pay by whatever date is indicated. So in this case, January 29th, which happens to be exactly 3 weeks after the tax notice. If you choose to use so, you can detach the payment voucher at the bottom of the notice. This is on page 1. If you do use a check or a money order, make it payable to the United States Treasury. Enter the employer ID number, the tax period, and the form number on that check. But do also double check that the IRS isn't requiring you to use the electronic federal tax payment system, as that has been a change in the past few years, at least I believe since this notice came out on the IRS website. So double check that you're enrolled in the EFTPS, and if you're not, we'll put links in the show notes on how you can do that. There should be a breakdown of any payments, deposits, credits, overpayments that were applied to your account. If there's a discrepancy with your records, you should be able to call the 800 number that's in your notice to discuss those discrepancies. If you have an outstanding tax penalty or tax bill, then there should be a calculation of the failure to pay penalty in this case, and then some verbiage on how you can remove or reduce those penalties. And you can do that by filing IRS Form 843, which is the claim for a refund, and a request for abatement form. So you could do this under a couple of circumstances. One would be a program known as First Time Abate, which is a program that that allows the IRS to waive penalties on for certain taxpayers on a wide variety of different penalties if the IRS considers you to be a relatively reliable taxpayer. This is a first time, not necessarily first time in your lifetime, just first time in recent history. They do have some qualifiers on what constitutes a first time abatement. So even if you've had this issue, like say 10 years ago, there's a chance that you could still qualify under the first time abatement. Or you can also qualify under any number of reasonable cause situations. You can finally qualify under what's known as the erroneous written advice from the IRS. So if you requested advice from the IRS in writing, you gave the IRS plenty of information and it was accurate and adequate, and you received a written response back from the IRS, which you relied on, and the IRS came back and imposed a penalty anyway, then you would have justification to get your penalties removed. So the penalty, if the IRS abates your penalty, will also include any interest that's calculated with that penalty. It won't abate interest that was on your original tax bill, but it will include any abatement of interest that was applied to the penalties that you incurred. So there is a section that talks about the breakdown of interest charges and how the IRS calculates them. That calculation is based on federal law. And then there's also a link at the very bottom of the form to resources that may be available. In this case, this is a page on the IRS website that talks about Understanding Your CP128 Notice. And there's not a whole lot of new information here that we haven't already covered, but there are a couple of frequently asked questions to help you navigate this. If you have difficulty, there's also a phone number for the taxpayer advocate, as well as some other tips for how you can avoid this next year. So let's go back to the notice. I think we pretty much covered all the bases on this one. So as I mentioned, CP128, that's a notice that would apply if the IRS had an overpayment, but you also had some sort of an outstanding tax balance and they applied it to a different to your account. So we'll put links in the show notes to relevant resources such as articles and videos that we've created about the forms and topics mentioned here. So if you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter and join our email subscribe list. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them in the comment section. And if you have a topic for a video that you would like to see created on a tax topic we haven't covered yet, please let me know. Thank you very much and have a great day.